Hello everyone, I'm Nick.
And I'm John. Happy New Year to you all, first of all, and welcome to this month's update in the Sync with Sophos series. Welcome to 2021. We've got lots of exciting news to tell you about with our range of products, and we're going to start out as we always do with the Endpoint Security Group set of products. So, Nick, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thanks, John, and yes, Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. Before I launch into that, actually, just a little bit of news. Obviously, you must have been hiding under a rock if you didn't hear about the SolarWinds breach in December. I wanted to draw your attention to an article that we posted to the Sophos news site. The link is available here from the presentation if you want to take a look at this. There's some really useful data on this page, actually, which is being moderated and maintained by a security team, essentially containing things like the indicators of compromise and the SHA hashes that have been detected as part of the SolarWinds breach that you can actually use if you or your customers are using InterceptX with EDR. You could use to proactively check for any remnants of possible malicious behavior inside you or your customer's environment. So definitely worth having a look at that. And yeah, please do ask if you've got any questions at all, or any customers that are concerned that they may have been affected in any way by this breach. So let's jump into the updates on some of the Sophos Central products. First of all, as John says, we're going to look at the EDR platform. Actually, no, before we do that, sorry, I beg your pardon, I'm getting carried away. I just want to remind you all of the situation regarding our Sophos InterceptX for Mac situation. So as we mentioned on the December update, we currently have an early access program running. So early access program gives you access to version 10.0.2 of the engine or the agent, and that is what's required in order to protect a machine running macOS 11 Big Sur. If your customers are in a position where they're waiting to update, we would encourage them to continue waiting to updating to macOS 11 because early access program software is effectively beta. It's not fully released yet. However, we do recognise that over the Christmas period, people might have got themselves shiny new Apple equipment, MacBooks or Mac Minis or other devices that are running Big Sur out of the box, and therefore they need to protect them. So that the option or the recommendation there is we enroll those devices in the early access program. For more information, click on the link here. There is also some information on that community post about how to use some backwards compatibility software called Rosetta 2. If you're running some of the latest hardware, which includes the Apple Silicon, i.e. the ARM processor chipsets, as opposed to the Intel-based chipsets. So yeah, if you've got any questions about that, obviously, please reach out to us. And as soon as the EAP has come to a natural end and the version 10.0.2 is fully generally available, we will, of course, keep you guys updated and make you aware of that. Just a quick reminder as well from last month, at the beginning of February this year now, we will be throttling back the ability to use older versions of the Sophos Central AD Sync tool. So you or your customers who are using AD Sync to synchronize Active Directory users with Central will need to be using a more up-to-date version that relies on this API credential in order to do that synchronization. The benefit of doing that, of course, as well, from a best practice point of view, is that you can then make use of multi-factor authentication with Central in conjunction with AD Sync. Essentially, where we are at the moment, the reason why a significant architecture change has been made to AD Sync is that you can't use an old version of the AD Sync tool and MFA concurrently on a Central account. So obviously, MFA is an important thing to be using from a security standpoint. So yeah, make sure you and your customers are running the latest version. Otherwise, it's going to stop working. So it's something to be mindful of. So we wanted to take a look at some EDR and MTR news next off. Then obviously we referred to InterceptX with EDR in respect to the SolarWinds breach and how you could use those tools to be aware of any possible breaches within the environment. Something that we quite quietly released in December that you might not be aware of is some new Sophos EDR Live Discover APIs. So the API essentially allows you to programmatically query your customer's estate using EDR Live Discover, which is great because you can now actually script the use of Live Discover, perhaps to run on a scheduled basis. Perhaps you're proactively looking for indicators of compromise. We've had a lot of conversations with partners recently about perhaps looking for machines that are unpatched, or perhaps you're wanting to look for machines where somebody's turned off tamper protection, for example, and forgot to turn it back on again. You could use this API to actually query that information from the Sophos schema, the tables of data held on the endpoint estate. If you've yet to fill your boots with Live Discover and get to grips with what you can do with this platform, clicking on this link here, and this will give you a sort of getting started overview of Live Discover. And if you want to know specifically about the API itself and the things you can do with that API, the link is also included here for that. One thing I will say is if you don't currently have access to Sophos InceptX with EDR within your test environments, you as partners of Sophos are entitled to an NFR license for this. So please do reach out to your channel account managers who can get you a quote in inverted commas for InceptX with EDR. That will be a zero value quote as a partner for your NFR license, but we will need you to officially purchase, as I say, in inverted commas, that quote so that we can get the license on the books and actually do that official transaction. But then you're entitled to an NFR license so you can actually play with the technology.
Mm-hmm.
On EDR, so we try each month to include an EDR tip, and this month I've snapshotted two images here. So these are two different screenshots. I know it doesn't look too obvious from the slide I've used here. The one on the left-hand side is a screenshot from our knowledge base articles, specifically around the Sophos Central Live Discover schema that exists, so the various different tables that exist within Sophos endpoints and data that you can query. And then the right-hand side of that image is essentially a screenshot from OS Query. So OS Query is the open source technology that we're using at the heart of InceptX with EDR. And the point to be made here is that collectively across those two sets of schemas, there are 288 tables of data that you can query in Windows, Apple Mac OS, and also Linux environments. So you're really only limited in terms of EDR, in terms of what you can query on your imagination. If endpoints hold data in one of those many tables, then you can query it using the EDR platform. Whilst searching for bits of data from one of those tables might be useful, what's even more powerful is actually joining that data together. So doing a really comprehensive SQL query that pulls back information from multiple tables in one set of results. That is very, very powerful. And again, if you want some more information on how to use the EDR tools to do that sort of thing, there's some really good blog posts on the community, some links off here to get access to those. So if you've got any questions on EDR, you're not perhaps using the tools to their potential at the moment, please do reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to have a more detailed conversation with you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just finally on sort of EDR and MTR, then some news regarding the MTR service. We released in the last quarter of last calendar year our Sophos Rapid Response Service. So this is essentially a 3-month trial period where we would actually include deploying the software agents onto customers' estates. This is a really useful service that we can stand up very quickly for customers that are experiencing some sort of cyber security breach, some sort of cyber event, and perhaps they're wanting some help to get on top of that and eradicate whatever it is from their environment. A good example would be a customer that's experiencing a ransomware attack. So this is a really good showcase for what our MTR team can do for your customers, and the conversion rate from customers who essentially trial the MTR service using Rapid Response to then go on to actually buy MTR as part of an ongoing managed service from Sophos is very good. We would encourage you to make use of this. So if you're talking to any prospects, any customers who perhaps aren't using next-gen endpoint, perhaps those customers aren't able to manage an EDR platform themselves because they don't have the skills or the know-how, this would be a really good example of a service that we can offer to that customer to help them deal with any cybersecurity incidents that they're experiencing right now. Again, for more information, obviously you can click on the hyperlink here. So John, I'm going to rest my voice for a minute. I don't know if you want to take over for a minute and talk to us a bit about some XG news that's going on in the NSG space.
Cool. So thanks, Nick. Yeah, there's not a massive amount of news on the XG front this time around, but we do have 2 firmware releases to talk about. So we'll start out with the lower number, and we'll start out with XG 17.5 MR15. So obviously XG 17.5 isn't the flagship release. It's not the current release anymore. So we're not really looking here at the new features and functions, but there has been an update to 17.5 that deals with certain security enhancements. So first and foremost, enforcing a certain level of complexity for passwords. So making sure you've got the right combination of special characters, uppercase, lowercase, all that sort of stuff to make sure that the passwords you use to administer the XG are appropriate. And then changes to the back-end encryption and storage mechanism associated with sensitive data and those password bits of information there, just to make sure that those are kept safe, those are kept secure. One thing to note is if you do upgrade any of your customers to 17.5 MR15, they will, or you, if you're in control, will be prompted to change your administration password. And while it is optional, it is very much highly recommended because it will give you the maximum benefit of these underlying security changes. Okay, so just one thing to be mindful and aware of. So if anybody's hanging on to 17.5 for any particular reason, then it's worth doing this upgrade just purely and simply from a security point of view. But the exciting news really is more associated with XG version 18. So we have also released XG version 18 MR4, which, to be honest, calling it a maintenance release is probably a little bit unfair, to be honest, because there are, as well as some housekeeping exercises, there are actually quite a number of new features in here as well. So we'll look at some of those features in just a second. Also, in parallel with this, XG version 18 MR4 does open up better integration with Sophos Central. So we'll start off with that. So better integration into the partner dashboard, allowing you to do things like group policy management right across your customer estate. So better group management of firewalls in there. Which also is quite timely given that CFM is now officially end of life. So it's a great alternative using the partner dashboard. You can also, on the subject of CFM being end of life, use a new policy import option to extract policies and rules off devices that are already in play in the field. So that's a really useful transitional tool to get devices that are either running CFM or SFM as a customer or partner managed platform, to take those policies off there and then have them in your library, in your repository, so you can roll those out to new devices when they get deployed in the future. So helping to get rid of those older platforms. One thing you can also do as well with XG version 18 MR4 is you can schedule firmware updates. So obviously those are future updates. So you need to do the update first so that you can automatically do updates in the future, if that makes any sense at all. So what you can do with that for the first time is use Sophos Central to not only push out firmware immediately, but also to plan in advance and schedule firmware. And that's obviously really useful because you can plan firmware updates for the minimum amount of impact to your customers. So if you know, for example, they have a period of downtime at a weekend or an evening or something like that, then you can plan your firmware updates accordingly. And I know a lot of you out there have been asking about HA support. So there are enhancements to the way that HA is supported inside Sophos Central. So you can see the clustering, you can see the management, and it also includes enhanced failover support as well. So you can see both peers at any one time. So lots of really useful information there about Sophos Central. But like I said, there are some other features actually on the XG as well. So we'll move forward and have a look at some of those, which are broadly split out into 3 categories. So we've got high availability, first of all. So I have to confess that I'm not completely aware of all of the full ins and outs of the underlying issue here, but apparently if you were running an active passive pair of devices, then the fast path didn't quite work as well as maybe it could. I believe it's something to do with caching packets so that they were stored on the off chance that the primary unit failed midway through a session. But as part of XG version 18 MR4, then that's been improved so that you do get the optimum out of FastPath transactions in a clustered environment. And obviously that's going to lead to enhanced benefits as well moving forward when we start to have a hardware dedicated route for FastPath packets as well. There's also an improvement that allows us to support HA in AWS, and particularly useful for Transit Gateway. So if you're not familiar with Transit Gateway, in a nutshell, it's basically a portal that you can send all the customer data to, and then once it's in there, it's inside AWS. So it helps to reduce the billing costs associated with transporting data around. But unfortunately, that obviously becomes then a critical point of failure, which we couldn't support from a HA point of view historically. So now we fixed that issue. So if you're going to use Transit Gateway, it is going to be quite a critical component to a customer's infrastructure. So it's really good that we can now support multiple instances there for resiliency. And overall, in general, the HA experience in terms of setup and upgrading has been improved as well. So there's a new wizard to go through for configuring a HA pair, which makes it easier from the get-go. And also the upgrades in terms of firmware updates, that process has been improved. So if any of you have been around long enough to remember the SG UTM, then one of the things that it did very nicely is it would do a graceful failover between clustered devices so that each could be updated with their firmware in turn, but keeping the customer network up and running, or certainly with a minimum amount of downtime. And we've copied that model across into the XG now. So what will happen is if you've got a clustered pair, then the secondary device will take charge. The primary gets an upgrade, then it fails back, and the secondary device can then get a firmware upgrade as well. So it's a relatively simple process to click through there with a minimal amount of downtime. Okay, then on the VPN side of things, so and quite a few enhancements here. One is exposing some of the advanced options for IPsec remote access clients, which previously were buried inside the CLI. So this replaces the SE admin functions inside the CLI. There's the ability to do that inside the GUI. Also, the Sophos Connect VPN client, which obviously we encourage everybody to use, is now available for download by individual desktop users themselves via the user portal. So in the same way that you can pull down things like the SSL VPN client, you can now pull down a Sophos Connect VPN client as well. And then finally, a bit of housekeeping here. The minimum standard now for SSL site-to-site and SSL remote access connections is now TLS version 1.2. So we've removed the option to use older Cypher suites for fairly obvious reasons in terms of security. And then the last section here is enhancements around security in general on the appliance. First of all, stronger password management using the stronger password hash as per 17.5, exactly the same changes. There is a change to the way that web content filtering works. So as soon as you enable any kind of web content filtering now, the IWF list is automatically blocked as part of any policy. So you don't have to tick the illegal UK box anymore. It will automatically block transactions to those destination websites, regardless of the type of web filter policy that you've enabled. Now, I did make a comment the other day that it was obviously a fairly self-explanatory change and obviously a very good change, and I couldn't see any reason why you'd want to override it. But there are a few fringe cases where it might be necessary. So if you're looking after a police force, for example, and they've got legitimate needs to go and look at those kind of sites and investigate, then may cause some conflicts that you may not necessarily be able to resolve immediately. I'm looking into finding out how that change can be overridden, because obviously the only option I can see at the moment is to completely disable web filtering for that particular user, and that may not necessarily be advantageous. So I'm going to find out a bit more about that, and hopefully I'll be back with a bit more information on that soon. Little minor change to optics as well. So the XG file will now integrate with optics, enabling the two solutions to work better as a pair. This is the sort of first step integration, and what this will do is optics will now be able to understand which instances in AWS are running the XG firewall, and it will show that in terms of consumption, billing, and also change the icons in the topology as well, so that you can see the firewalls a little bit more clearly. So that's just making optics a little bit more usable. Changes as well to synchronized application control. So what we have found is that some admins stop looking at synchronized application control after a while. and then you end up with a big build-up of applications that have not been classified, and it can become a bit unruly and a bit unmanageable. So there's now an option to automatically clean up newly discovered applications if they've not been classified and saved after a month. So just to emphasize, if you discover a new application on your network and you save that application, save that definition, then it will be kept perpetually. But if it's just sitting there waiting for somebody to process that application and nobody does anything with it after a month, then it will automatically purge it from the list. And then finally, authentication. So users can now be created for Radius using the new UPN format as well. So a little enhancement there to the way that authentication and Radius work on the device itself. One other thing to mention, which isn't in the slide deck as well, is the wireless team have been busy creating some new assets and some new tools associated with our wireless solution. So those are currently only available internally at Sophos, but keep an eye out because they should be rolled out into the partner portal very soon as well. Okay, so that's it from the NSG side.
Thanks, John. Yeah, that's definitely a lot more than your average maintenance release. That's more like version 18.5 in everything but name.
I wonder if there's some political reason why it's not called 18.5, but I wouldn't like to speculate.
Yeah, no, fair play. Thank you very much, sir. No, that's cool. Yeah, some good stuff there. So last month we talked to you all about an update regarding Sophos Mobile, in particular a migration tool that you have been able to use for a couple of months now, but essentially it was curated or managed alongside our development team. So our development team were kind of sitting on the first 50 or 100 or so migrations from SMC on-premise or SMC as a service into Sophos Central Mobile, just to make sure the process went well. And then towards the end of November, we essentially made that new process generally available. So the release notes, etc., for Sophos Central Mobile were updated with information about how to use that migration tool. One thing that we've had fed back by a number of people, particularly from our PS team and some of the SEs in our team, is that something that catches people out is buried in the documentation is the fact that in some cases the legacy SMC server actually needs to be left running, specifically if the customer is using iOS or macOS or Windows devices. Essentially, there's a symbolic link in the device certificate that we can't update to change. So essentially it needs to go to the SMC server first before it knows that that device should be in fact talking to Sophos Central Mobile instead. Android isn't an issue. So if your customer has an Android only house, then we should be able to shut down the SMC server in that scenario. However, it's just to draw your attention to this. It is mentioned in the documentation. However, it could be clearer in my view. So I've agreed with the product management team that they're going to get the knowledge base article updated so this particular point is referenced in the migration considerations section of the document. But yeah, it's just something to call out. Obviously, in the fullness of time, as your customers replace hardware as part of their natural life cycle and new devices are registered with Sophos Central Mobile, the need to have that SMC server still running will disappear. But it's just something to be aware of for any customers that are perhaps expecting to migrate and immediately fold that server down and get rid of it. If it's a physical server, what I would recommend doing is probably virtualizing it and having it running there in the background so you can keep it running for the mobile estate to carry on running in the short term. So that's that one. Next, we wanted to draw your attention to some of the training certification information. We kind of do this each month. Given that our latest partner program that we updated last summer has a lot more emphasis on partner enablement and certification and partners having completed necessary courses in order to be compliant with our channel program. We just want to keep banging that drum, I guess, and reminding you guys where the training material is, what you need to be doing to consume that content and so on. And so there are a number of, if you've not seen this before, in the Sophos partner portal, there are certified sales consultant, engineer, architect, and technician courses available. Depending on where you sit or your organization sits within that channel program, there are different levels of certification required. Your channel account manager should have been in touch with you or your colleagues by now to make clear what certification needs to be done, and you have until the end of March to have completed that certification. Obviously, if you've got any questions, not sure about whether you're doing the right course, etc., then please reach out to us. The two key ones that we'd recommend, or two key areas, would be the Sophos Central Endpoint and Server courses, both engineer and architect accreditation level, and then the same for XG Firewall as well. There is an XG certified technician course that has been recently updated to version 18 as well. That's a really good course for anyone that's providing support services to their customers, to triage calls. They're doing level 1, level 2 support. We would definitely recommend consuming that content as well. But if you've got any questions regarding the certification, please ask. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is there are a number of these on-demand technical training courses available. So if you're specifically interested in knowing a bit more about Sophos Mobile, as I've just been discussing, Sophos Wireless, as John's been mentioning, or encryption, or anything else within our portfolio that doesn't fall into the courses covered by the engineer and architect content that I've mentioned, then these are available to consume on demand on the partner portal. What's nice about these courses is they're typically only 2 to 3 hours in length, so you can fit them in around other commitments as well, whereas the engineer and architect training typically takes a couple of days to complete. So yeah, really useful one to fill your diary up with in between additional commitments that you might have. So yeah, I don't know if John, you've got anything to add to any of this at all?
Not on these slides, although I did notice that CFM is still listed as a course, which is quite entertaining.
Good point. Yeah,
I don't know why it's great that they've produced that just in time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good shout, actually. That probably needs taking off the list, doesn't it? Yeah, that's a very good spot. Thank you for that.
Eagle-eyed. The other thing we wanted to talk about was the XG Academy, wasn't it? That's probably worth a little bit of a chat. So some of our colleagues in sales engineering right across EMEA actually and wider are putting together an academy series which starts very soon, so towards the end of January, which will again give you some bite-sized courses and bite-sized introductions to a lot of concepts around the XG platform and some of its wider integrations as well. So those are definitely things to pop into your diary and consume. Again, you can see that they are very bite-sized, so they're all an hour in length. And there's some really good speakers on there as well that will take you through some topics like some practical stuff as well, like migration from SG to XG, which is going to be pertinent for quite a lot of you listening to this, I would have thought, through to the complexities of routing and managing traffic, and remote access to your XG, managing the estate. And then also at the end there, we've got some sneak peeks from Chris McCormack there looking at the future of the XG platform as well. So definitely ones to register for and get involved with. You should find those courses very useful.
100%. Yeah, we did something similar the first quarter of 2020, actually, just before lockdown here in the UK, certainly. And yeah, those sessions were really well received. And of course, at the time, we'd only really just released XG version 18. And so some of the content was, although it was very good and very well received, actually some of the content was kind of, it had a bit of finessing to be done. Now we're well into the release of the XG version 18 platform. It's definitely worthwhile looking at and getting on. If you can't attend them live as well, I believe they are being recorded, so there'll be some links off this document that you can register and retrospectively get access to those materials. So yeah, 100%. Cheers, John.
No worries.
So I guess just in terms of some updates then for you all as partners, a couple of things we wanted to draw your attention to. If you missed last month, so one of these sessions at the beginning of December, we made you aware of the Sophos 2021 threat report. Some really good reads in there. We'd recommend having a look at. Information on the future of ransomware, for example, and how COVID-19 has changed the way in which we're having to protect our customers. Again, some more reference to mobile and how that's being exploited by cyber criminals. So yeah, have a look at that link on the page here and have a read. Definitely worthwhile a look at. Certainly helps you articulate the need for next gen cybersecurity when you're talking to your customers and your prospects. Another reminder of the Sophos SE Enablement Partner Portal. I agree, not very snappy title. If you've got any better ideas of what we should be calling this, then that's fine. Please let us know. So just a screenshot that I've taken to show you guys, if you haven't seen it already. If you want to be invited to this, please do let us know. Send us an email, and we can add your email address to the list of guests, external guests. Remember this. Obviously, you need to be a Microsoft Teams user in order to access it. This is the desktop app, and currently, in order to view this Teams channel, you do need to log out of your own organization's team environment and log in as a guest to the Sophos one. So in the Teams app up here at the top right-hand corner, you'd need to log out of your organization, hit the drop-down menu and log on to the Sophos one. That's not ideal, and the feedback from a lot of partners is that, at the moment it's not terribly useful, because essentially by doing so, then your colleagues can't contact you. Any Teams calls you're joined to, you'll be dropped off of because you've logged out your organization. We're kind of at the mercy of Microsoft and their roadmap. Actually, I know we joke about roadmap all the time. This is how Microsoft's roadmap is affecting us. So we're hopeful that this quarter they will actually update the Teams app, and we will from that point be able to, if you can imagine the bar on the left-hand side here, which I've omitted from the screenshot, we'll be able to dive in and out of various different Teams channels without having to log in and out of different organizations. So that should be coming this quarter. So watch this space. But at that point, I'd expect more and more people to start using this enablement portal, hopefully. The newsletter we published, I think, John, was it end of December, the last newsletter came out?
It was, yeah, went out just before Christmas, just before the Christmas break.
Yeah, so thank you for those of you that consume that. It's hopefully a resource that remains useful to you. It's a bit more sort of bite-sized and compressed format to these kind of monthly updates. We'll continue doing those in our vlogs, and we've been recently doing the podcast as well. Hopefully just try to create as many avenues as possible to get information out to our partners. We don't expect partners to consume every single one of those, but hopefully we can provide something in a format that's useful to you. The archive of newsletters, we're working on one for February at the moment, actually, but we will keep the archive of previously released newsletters available in the portal that we've just been talking about. And I guess last couple of things really. So obviously we're on this Sync with Sophos monthly webinar. So thank you for joining. If you think your colleagues would benefit from joining these too, we've included a registration link on the slide deck. Please let us know what you think of these, if these sessions are useful. Obviously we'll continue doing them as long as we think that they're useful to our partners, but if there's additional content or slightly different change to the format that you want to see, then please do let us know. If you're not telling us how we're getting on, then we can't change for the benefit. So your feedback is welcome.
Absolutely.
And the last one, really. So in November, we ran our first virtual cybersecurity summit. Obviously, we'd have loved to have been talking to customers face to face and partners as well, of course, in November, but that just wasn't possible last year. The benefit, I suppose, of doing all of this virtually is that we can record it and make the content available forever. Once it's on the internet, there's no taking it away. So the content is still available. If you use this register link available on the slide deck, then you can retrospectively get access to that content and see some of the really great content that was put together, not just by Sophos, people telling you how great Sophos is. Of course, we're biased and we're going to do that, but actually a lot of leading industry experts talking about the threat landscape generally, emerging cybersecurity strategies, things that all vendors should be thinking about when it comes to the development of their products and doing a better job of keeping their customers secure. So yeah, please do take a look at some of that material if you've not had a chance to already.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's about it, John. I don't know if you've got anything you wanted to add, or are we ready to wrap up?
I think we're about done. Yeah. We did mention the podcast, but just a little push for the podcast. It's a really nice way of consuming the updates that we do in a way that doesn't maybe impact quite so much on your business. If you're out on your 1 hour of allotted exercise a day, for example, then take Nick and I for a run with you. That'd be nice. Don't do that on a bicycle; it could be dangerous. But yeah, it's I think the podcast is a nice little idea. I think it's a really good way of getting the staff in a slightly different way, because we appreciate you're all busy. But yeah, we continue to make content in various different ways: the written words, the videos, and the audio side of things now, just to try and find some way of accessing your valuable time in a way that suits you. So yeah, check that one out as well.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for joining, and yeah, speak to you soon.
No worries. Yeah, take care, everyone. Speak soon.